When my nephew Marcus screamed at me that I was nothing but a pathetic leech living off family charity while demanding I move out of my worthless little apartment so he could sell the building to fund his tech startup dreams, he had no idea he was yelling at Dorothy Richardson, the founder and CEO of Richardson Industries, the Fortune 500 conglomerate that owned the cloud infrastructure, data centers and software licensing agreements that kept his entire company running, whose venture capital arm had been quietly funding his competitors, and whose real estate division controlled the commercial lease for his startup's headquarters, all while he dismissed his freeloading old aunt as a burden who was too senile to understand modern business, never knowing that his cruel words would cost him his $50 million company valuation and force him to literally beg for mercy at my corporate headquarters reception desk. Make sure to hit that like button. Drop a comment about your worst experience with family members who called you names while demanding your help, and subscribe, because you won't believe what happens when a cruel nephew discovers that his useless old aunt actually controls the entire digital infrastructure his startup depends on to exist. My name is Dorothy Richardson. I'm 74 years old, and this story begins on March 5th when I returned from what Marcus thought was just another boring doctor's appointment in downtown San Francisco, but was actually a closed-door board meeting with Richardson Industries Executive Committee, where I'd been finalizing the acquisition strategy that would either make Marcus's startup dreams a spectacular reality or a devastating bankruptcy, depending on how he chose to treat the elderly aunt, whose technology empire had been quietly ensuring his company could operate in the most competitive market in Silicon Valley. The modest one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco's Mission District, where I've lived for the past 8 years, to visitors as the simple retirement home of a widowed former librarian who survives on Social Security and the monthly allowance that my family provides out of pity for my circumstances. The carefully maintained herb garden on my small balcony featuring rosemary, thyme, and mint that I use for cooking simple meals suggests someone whose greatest pleasure comes from nurturing small growing things. The collection of mystery novels lining my bookshelves, Dorothy Sayers, Agatha Christie, and Louise Penny, all appear to be library discards purchased for 50 cents each at community book sale. The vintage furniture I've kept since my late husband Charles passed away 8 years ago tells a story of financial necessity rather than sentimental choice. The faded floral sofa that Charles and I bought in 1987, the oak dining table with water rings from decades of family meals, and the mismatched chairs collected over 40 years of marriage all suggest a woman who makes do with what she has, because purchasing new furniture would strain a fixed income that barely covers rent, utilities, and basic grocery. What my nephew Marcus sees during his increasingly impatient monthly visits is exactly what I've cultivated since Charles's death. A sweet but slightly confused elderly woman who struggles with smartphones, needs help understanding medical bills that seem to grow more complicated every year, and whose greatest excitement comes from feeding pigeons in Dolores Park and organizing monthly book discussions at the No Valley Library. The image of harmless Aunt Dorothy with her sensible cardigans from Goodwill, reading glasses on a beaded chain, and tendency to repeat stories about the good old days when people respected their elders, has served me perfectly in maintaining privacy while protecting the technology empire that Marcus has never suspected exists beneath his aunt's humble facade. The apartment that Marcus dismisses as barely worth the $2,400 monthly rent we're throwing away actually serves as my private command center for operations that extend far beyond retirement living. The modest living room with its cheerful displays of family photos, Marcus's college graduation, his sister Sarah's wedding, grandchildren I see twice a year, and carefully organized bookshelves conceals sophisticated business coordination systems, where I manage global technology portfolios worth $47 billion, oversee software development projects in 14 countries, and direct the digital infrastructure networks that have made me one of Silicon Valley's most influential but invisible leaders. The family photos themselves tell a carefully curated story of a grandmother whose greatest pride comes from her successful nephew and niece, who've made something of themselves in the modern world. Marcus's Stanford computer science degree hangs in a modest frame next to Sarah's Harvard MBA, both positioned where visitors can see them immediately upon entering my living room. These displays reinforce the narrative that I'm an elderly relative whose vicarious pride in family accomplishments represents the closest she'll ever come to understanding the technology and business worlds that her educated relatives navigate with such impressive expertise. My morning routine, as observed by Marcus during his dutiful but increasingly brief visits, reinforces every assumption about my limited capabilities and complete dependence on family financial support. He sees me shuffling around in house slippers at 10 a.m., wearing a faded bathrobe over a nightgown that suggests someone who has nowhere important to go and no schedule more demanding than daytime television programming. The carefully arranged pills in a weekly dispenser, the magnifying glass I use for reading newspapers, and the large button telephone that Charles bought me for emergencies all contribute to an image of elderly vulnerability that requires family protection and assistance. What Marcus doesn't see is the sophisticated technology infrastructure hidden throughout my apartment that enables me to coordinate business operations across 6 time zones while maintaining the appearance of a confused retiree who needs help figuring out her cable television remote control. Behind the false wall in my bedroom closet, accessible through a biometric scanner disguised as a jewelry box, lies a command center that would impress the security teams at most Fortune. The enterprise-grade fiber-optic internet connection that enters my building through the utility room and connects directly to my hidden office provides bandwidth capabilities that exceed what most Silicon Valley startups can afford for their entire operations. The multiple monitor display, when activated through voice commands that Marcus has never heard because he assumes I'm too technologically challenged to use anything more sophisticated than a flip phone, show real-time data streams from Richardson Industries' global operation, including server performance metrics from data centers in Tokyo, London, São Paulo, and Mumbai. The quantum-encrypted communication systems that connect me to development teams, venture capital partners, and corporate executives throughout the world operate on frequencies that government intelligence agencies use for their most sensitive communications. The secure document server, accessible only through multi-factor authentication that includes retinal scanning, voice recognition, and biometric verification, contains strategic plans for technology acquisitions worth hundreds of millions of dollars, partnership agreements with companies whose names would be instantly recognizable to anyone who uses a smartphone or computer, and competitive intelligence reports that predict industry trends 18 months before they become apparent to market analysts. But perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of my hidden infrastructure is the AI-powered monitoring system that tracks every mention of Richardson Industries, my personal name, and related business activities across the internet, social media platforms, and traditional news sources. This system, developed by my own team of cybersecurity specialists, ensures that my privacy remains protected while providing real-time alerts about any potential threats to my anonymity or security. The irony that I've achieved complete digital invisibility while running one of the world's most influential technology companies would be apparent to Marcus if he possessed the sophistication to recognize the contradiction between my apparent technological helplessness and the fact that no information about Dorothy Richardson appears in any search engine result. My apartment occupies the ground floor of a 3-story building that I purchased through a network of shell companies in 2016 for $2.8 million, a transaction that appeared in public records as an investment by Golden Gate Property Holdings and name generic enough to avoid attracting attention while providing the legal framework necessary for strategic real estate development throughout the Bay Area. The building's current valuation of $12.3 million reflects both the Mission District's transformation into a technology hub and the strategic improvements I've coordinated to ensure that my headquarters remains both inconspicuous and operationally sophisticated. The second and third floor, which Marcus has never seen despite 6 years of occasional visits, house what building permits and insurance records describe as residential rental units, but actually contain my private office suites, enterprise-grade server room, and secure meeting facilities where I conduct face-to-face negotiations with venture capital partners, government officials, and international business leaders, whose identities would surprise anyone who assumes that important business happens only in glass towers, with corporate logos and marble lobby. The second floor serves as my primary workspace, featuring a conference room with holographic display capabilities that enable real-time collaboration with team members in Richardson Industries offices throughout the world. The custom-designed furniture appears to be modest office equipment purchased from commercial suppliers, but each piece contains hidden technology that provides secure communications, biometric monitoring, and emergency protocols that could evacuate me from the building within 90 seconds if security threats were detected by the building's AI monitoring system. The third floor houses what insurance documents describe as computer equipment for small business operations, but actually contains server farms with processing power that rivals what major universities use for complex scientific research. The cooling systems, disguised as standard HVAC equipment, maintain optimal operating temperatures for quantum computing processors that run predictive algorithms for financial markets, consumer behavior analysis, and technology trend forecasting that gives Richardson Industries competitive advantages worth billions of dollars in strategic decision-making. The building's external appearance carefully maintains the aesthetic of a renovated residential property that fits seamlessly into the Mission District's architectural character. The solar panels on the roof appear to be standard residential installations designed to reduce utility costs, but actually provide redundant power systems that ensure my operations continue uninterrupted, even during major power grid failures that affect the broader Bay Area. The discrete satellite communication equipment, camouflaged as weathering architectural detail, provides backup internet connectivity that operates independently of commercial service providers and remains functional during natural disasters or cyber attacks that might disable conventional infrastructure. Perhaps the most significant aspect of my carefully maintained image is how completely it has concealed my role as the founder and CEO of Richardson Industries, the technology conglomerate that has quietly dominated cloud computing, enterprise, and digital infrastructure for the past 30 years. My partnership with visionary engineers, strategic investors, and technology innovators has created a network of essential services, supporting systems, and industry relationships that determines which tech startups thrive and which disappear without a trace in the world's most competitive technology market. Richardson Industries operates through a complex structure of subsidiaries, holding companies, and licensing agreements that ensure both privacy and operational efficiency across multiple technology sectors. The company's public face consists of professional executive regulatory affairs specialists and media relations teams who handle all external communications while protecting my identity as the ultimate decision-maker whose strategic vision guides every aspect of the company's operations, from product development to acquisition strategies that reshape entire market segments. Our corporate structure includes Richardson Cloud Services, which provides the data storage and processing capabilities that enable over 12,000 startups to operate without investing millions of dollars in their own server infrastructure. Richardson Software Solutions develops and licenses the specialized applications that allow small companies to compete with established corporations by accessing enterprise-level capabilities at startup-friendly prices. Richardson Venture Capital identifies and supports promising entrepreneurs whose innovations could disrupt established industries or create entirely new market categories. But the most crucial aspect of Richardson Industries' influence is our ownership of the fundamental digital infrastructure that powers Silicon Valley's innovation ecosystem. Our data centers, strategically located throughout California, Oregon, and Nevada, house the servers that store and process information for 68% of the Bay Area's technology companies. Our fiber optic networks provide the high-speed internet connectivity that enables real-time collaboration between development teams, investors, and customers across multiple continents. Our cybersecurity protocols protect intellectual property worth hundreds of billions of dollars from corporate espionage, foreign government interference, and criminal organizations that target technology companies for industrial secrets and financial data. The daily routine that Marcus observes during his visits reinforces his assumptions about my limited capabilities and complete financial dependence on family assistance. He sees me expressing gratitude for the $800 monthly allowance that he and his sister Sarah provide for my living expenses, money I could earn in interest payments during the time it takes to brew a pot of tea. He watches me struggle with smartphone functions that seem obvious to any competent adult, not realizing that my apparent confusion about basic technology represents a carefully choreographed performance designed to maintain my cover identity. What Marcus doesn't see are the 5 a.m. video conferences with development teams in Tokyo, Bangalore, Stockholm, and Tel Aviv, where I coordinate software projects that will influence how millions of people interact with technology over the next decade. He doesn't witness the strategic planning sessions that happen after he leaves, where I analyze market intelligence reports that predict which startup companies will succeed, which will fail, and which represent acquisition opportunities that could provide Richardson Industries with crucial technological capabilities or market positions. He's never observed the private consultations, where I coordinate major technology acquisitions worth hundreds of millions of dollars, partnership agreements that create new industry standards, and infrastructure investments that determine whether emerging technologies like quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and sustainable energy systems develop as tools for human benefit or corporate profit maximization, without regard for social consequences. The relationships I've developed with government officials, university research, and international business leaders over 3 decades of strategic networking remain completely invisible to Marcus, who assumes that my social interactions consist primarily of small talk with elderly neighbors and occasional conversations with librarians about book recommendations. He has no idea that my contact list includes Nobel Prize winners, Fortune 500 CEOs, heads of state from 6 countries, and the principal investigators for research projects that will determine how technology shapes human society for the next 50 years. This brings me to the painful irony of my nephew Marcus's situation. For the past 3 years, Marcus has been building his reputation as an innovative software developer and startup founder, earning recognition for his data visualization platform, Insight Flow, that helps small businesses analyze customer behavior and optimize their marketing strategies through sophisticated pattern recognition and predictive analytics that identify purchasing trends, seasonal variation, and demographic preferences that traditional analysis methods fail to detect. His success in securing $3.2 million in venture capital funding from prestigious Silicon Valley investors, attracting experienced developers who left established companies to join his startup, and gaining clients throughout the Bay Area who pay premium prices for his company's analytical services, has been attributed to his coding talent, business acumen, and natural understanding of market needs that established companies have overlooked due to their focus on large corporate clients rather than small business innovation. The recognition that Marcus has earned within the technology community includes features in TechCrunch and Wired magazine, speaking invitations at major industry conferences, and inclusion in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list for enterprise technology innovators. His company's rapid growth from basement startup to San Francisco headquarters, with 27 employees, has been cited as an example of how brilliant entrepreneurs can disrupt established industries through innovative thinking and technical excellence that creates solutions for underserved market segments. What Marcus has never understood is that his rapid advancement from junior developer at a mid-sized software company to startup CEO with a $50 million company of valuation reflects the kind of infrastructure support and strategic access that I've been coordinating through Richardson Industries' startup incubator program. The cloud services that seemed to offer him unlimited storage and processing power at remarkably affordable rates weren't the result of competitive pricing in an efficient market. They were carefully calibrated subsidies designed to enable promising entrepreneurs to focus on innovation rather than infrastructure costs. The software licenses that provided his small team with enterprise-level development tools, security protocol, and analytics capabilities that would normally cost hundreds of thousands of dollars annually were available to Insight Flow through startup partnership programs that Marcus assumed represented standard industry practices for supporting emerging companies. In reality, these partnerships were coordinated through Richardson Industries' Strategic Investment Division, which identifies promising entrepreneurs and provides hidden support that enables rapid development and market entry, while maintaining the founders' belief that their success reflects individual capability rather than institutional assistance. The beautiful co-working space in Soma where Marcus built his company, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls, state-of-the-art networking infrastructure, and custom server rooms designed for data-intensive applications, wasn't just a fortunate real estate discovery that happened to meet his technical requirements at an affordable price. The property's transformation from abandoned industrial space to cutting-edge technology incubator represented 18 months of strategic development coordinated by Richardson Industries' real estate division, which creates environments specifically designed to support the kinds of innovative companies that align with our investment priorities and social impact objectives. The networking equipment that provides insight flow with internet connectivity faster than what most Fortune 500. The backup power systems that ensure uninterrupted operations during electrical grid failures, and the physical security measures that protect intellectual property and customer data from industrial espionage, weren't standard features that came with the lease. They were custom installations funded through Richardson Industries' Infrastructure Investment Program, designed to provide startups with enterprise-level capabilities that enable them to compete with established corporations, while maintaining the lean operational structure that allows rapid adaptation to changing market conditions. But perhaps the most significant support that Marcus has never recognized is the strategic market intelligence that has guided his product development decisions, target customer identification, and competitive positioning strategy. The industry research reports that his team found through online databases, the market analysis studies that confirmed demand for his company's services, and the technology trend forecasts that validated his product development roadmap were all produced by Richardson Industries' Research Division, which provides emerging companies with the kind of sophisticated business intelligence that normally costs millions of dollars and requires years of relationship building to access. The venture capital investors who funded Insight Flow's growth weren't independent decision makers who discovered his company through their own research and analysis. They were strategic partners within Richardson Industries' investment network, coordinated through our venture capital division, provide promising entrepreneurs with the funding they need, while ensuring that innovative companies develop in ways that benefit society, rather than just maximizing short-term profits for investors who don't understand or care about the long-term consequences of technological development. The customers who became Insight Flow's early adopters and provided the revenue growth that attracted additional investment weren't random small businesses who happened to discover his services through marketing effort. They were companies within Richardson Industries' business network, coordinated through our partner relations division, to provide promising startups with the customer base they need to prove market demand and achieve sustainable revenue growth that justifies continued investment and expansion. The media attention that established Marcus's reputation as an innovative entrepreneur and thought leader in the technology community wasn't the organic result of journalistic interest in emerging companies. The TechCrunch features, Wired magazine profile, and conference speaking invitations were coordinated through Richardson Industries' public relations network, which ensures that promising entrepreneurs receive the recognition they need to attract talent, customers, and additional investors, while building personal brands that enhance their company's credibility and market position. But the most devastating aspect of Marcus's situation is his complete ignorance of these support systems, combined with his assumption that elderly family members exist primarily to provide grateful appreciation for basic financial assistance, rather than recognizing that sometimes the people you dismiss as burdens might actually be the invisible foundations supporting everything you think you've achieved through your own brilliance and hard work. The tragic irony is that Marcus's natural talent for software development and his genuine insights about small business needs would have enabled him to succeed independently, given sufficient time and appropriate support. The assistance that I coordinated through Richardson Industries Network was designed to accelerate his development and reduce the risks that destroy most promising startups, not to create artificial success that he couldn't sustain through his own capability. My goal was always to provide Marcus with the foundation he needed to build an authentic career in the technology industry, while maintaining his independence and professional confidence, never imagining that success would transform him into someone who treated family support as an entitlement and elderly wisdom as an obstacle to modern advancement. The transformation of Marcus Gen. Richardson from the respectful nephew I helped raise into someone who viewed elderly family members as financial burdens, rather than sources of wisdom and support, had been gradual, but heartbreaking to witness. His journey from a curious child who spent summers at my house asking endless questions about computers and technology to a successful startup CEO, who treated my supposed technological ignorance with barely concealed impatience, represented a fundamental shift in values that went far beyond normal generational differences or professional advance. Marcus's early years had been marked by genuine intellectual curiosity and authentic respect for family relationships. As a 12-year-old visiting during school breaks, he would sit patiently while I explained basic programming concepts, using analogies to library cataloging systems, never showing the dismissive attitude that characterized his recent interaction. His questions about how computers worked, why some software was better than others, and what made technology companies successful reflected genuine interest in learning, rather than the superficial engagement that adults often display when humoring elderly relatives' attempts to share knowledge. The undergraduate years at Stanford had been when I first noticed subtle changes in Marcus's attitude toward family wisdom and traditional values. His computer science coursework, combined with exposure to Silicon Valley's culture of youth-centered innovation and disruptive thinking, had gradually convinced him that technological advancement automatically rendered previous generations' knowledge obsolete. The respectful young man who once asked for my thoughts about career decisions began treating family advice as well-intentioned, but fundamentally irrelevant to the realities of modern business and technological development. His transformation accelerated during the early years of his professional career at Next Tech Solutions, a mid-sized software company where he worked as a junior developer, while building the technical skills and industry connections that would eventually enable his entrepreneurial ambition. The startup culture's emphasis on rapid innovation, aggressive competition, and individual achievement gradually overwhelmed the collaborative values and intergenerational respect that Charles and I had tried to instill during his formative years. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of Marcus's professional development was his systematic misunderstanding of the support systems that enabled his rapid advancement from entry-level programmer to senior developer to team leader within just 3 years at Next Tech. The challenging projects that seemed perfectly suited to his technical interests, the mentorship opportunities that accelerated his skill development, and the industry recognition that established his reputation as a promising young developer all reflected careful coordination through Richardson Industries' professional development network. The programming languages that Marcus mastered during his time at Next Tech, advanced data analytics frameworks, machine learning algorithms, and cloud computing architectures, weren't simply the result of his individual study and practice. The specialized training programs that were coincidentally available through his company's professional development budget, the conferences where he presented papers that earned industry recognition, and the networking events where he met influential investors and potential business partners, were all coordinated through Richardson Industries' talent development division. The specific technical challenges that shaped Marcus's expertise in data visualization and predictive analytics weren't random assignments that happened to align with his interests and capabilities. They were carefully designed projects that enabled him to develop exactly the skills he would need for his future entrepreneurial ventures, while building a portfolio of work that would attract the kind of investment and customer interest necessary for successful startup development. The industry connections that Marcus developed during his years at Next Tech, relationships with venture capital partners, potential customers, and experienced developers, who would later join his startup team, weren't the organic result of professional networking and relationship building. They were strategic introductions facilitated through Richardson Industries' professional network, designed to provide promising entrepreneurs with the social capital necessary for successful business development, while maintaining their belief that success reflected individual capability and interpersonal skill. But Marcus's interpretation of these opportunities and advantages had gradually transformed his understanding of family relationships and intergenerational responsibility. Instead of recognizing that his success might reflect broader support systems and community investment in his development, he became convinced that his achievements demonstrated the superiority of youth, innovation, and technological sophistication over traditional values like family loyalty, elderly respect, and community contribution. The apartment that Marcus rented in Soma, a modern one-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed concrete walls, and smart home technology that responded to voice commands, represented his growing identification with Silicon Valley's culture of technological advancement and individual success. The furniture he selected emphasized minimalist design and cutting-edge functionality over comfort or sentimental value, reflecting his belief that emotional attachment to material possessions represented outdated thinking that interfered with the kind of adaptive flexibility necessary for entrepreneurial success. The relationship between Marcus and his girlfriend Amanda Thompson provided another window into his evolving values and priorities. Amanda, a marketing specialist at a prominent venture capital firm, shared Marcus's assumption that technological innovation automatically created positive social change, and that traditional institutions, like family obligations, community service, and intergenerational support, represented obstacles to progress, rather than sources of wisdom and stability. Their conversations, which I occasionally overheard during family gatherings, revealed a worldview that prioritized efficiency, scalability, and measurable outcomes over relationships, tradition, and the kind of unmeasurable contributions that elderly family members provide through emotional support, historical perspective, and institutional memory. Amanda's influence on Marcus's thinking about family relationships had been particularly damaging, as she consistently reinforced his assumption that time spent with elderly relatives represented opportunity costs that interfered with career advancement and professional networking. The casual way that Marcus and Amanda discussed optimizing family obligations, minimizing time spent at gatherings, delegating elderly care responsibilities to professional services, and treating family financial support as tax-deductible charitable contributions rather than expressions of love and respect, revealed how thoroughly their professional training in efficiency and resource allocation had corrupted their understanding of human relationships and social responsibility. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of Marcus's relationship with Amanda was her systematic reinforcement of his ageist assumptions about elderly capabilities and relevance to modern society. Her comments about digital natives versus older generations who just don't get technology. Her jokes about elderly people's confusion with smartphones and social media, and her dismissive attitude toward traditional wisdom and historical perspective, provided constant validation for Marcus's growing impatience with family obligations and elderly needs. The 3 years that Marcus spent developing Insight Flow from initial concept to functioning business had been marked by increasing professional confidence and decreasing family engagement. His success in securing initial funding, attracting talented employees, and gaining recognition within the technology community had convinced him that his individual capabilities and innovative thinking were responsible for achievements that actually reflected sophisticated support systems coordinated through Richardson Industries' startup development network. The co-working space where Marcus built his company, located in a converted warehouse in Soma's startup district, provided the perfect environment for reinforcing Silicon Valley's culture of youth-centered innovation and technological disruption. The daily interactions with other young entrepreneurs, the exposure to venture capital presentations that emphasized rapid growth and market domination, and the constant pressure to demonstrate measurable progress toward ambitious goals, all contributed to a mindset that treated anything not directly related to business advancement as unnecessary distraction. The company culture that Marcus developed at InsightFlow reflected his growing identification with Silicon Valley's values of efficiency, innovation, and competitive advantage over traditional priorities like work-life balance, community contribution, and family responsibility. The hiring practices that prioritize technical skills and cultural fit over experience and wisdom, the workplace policies that emphasized unlimited vacation time and flexible schedules, while expecting constant availability for urgent projects, and the performance evaluation systems that measured individual productivity rather than collaborative contribution, all demonstrated how thoroughly Marcus had absorbed the technology industry's youth-biased assumptions about capability and value. The employees that Marcus attracted, InsightFlow, primarily recent graduates from prestigious computer science programs who shared his enthusiasm for technological innovation and rapid career advancement, provided constant reinforcement for his belief that elderly wisdom and traditional business practices represented obstacles to the kind of disruptive thinking necessary for startup success. The daily conversations about cutting-edge programming techniques, emerging market opportunities, and strategies for outcompeting established companies created an echo chamber that validated his assumptions about generational superiority and technological progress. But the most damaging aspect of InsightFlow's culture was its systematic dismissal of any business wisdom or strategic guidance that didn't come from within the technology community's established networks of young entrepreneurs, venture capital investors, and innovation consultants. The assumption that elderly business leaders, traditional industries, and established companies represented legacy thinking that interfered with innovative solutions prevented Marcus from recognizing that his success might depend on exactly the kind of institutional knowledge and strategic relationships that he was systematically devaluing. The industry recognition that Marcus earned through his work at InsightFlow, speaking invitations at major technology conferences, features in prominent business publications, and inclusion in lists of promising young entrepreneurs, had been particularly damaging to his character development, because it provided external validation for his assumptions about individual capability and generational superiority. The applause he received when discussing digital transformation and innovative disruption at conferences reinforced his belief that his success reflected personal brilliance rather than systematic support from infrastructure and networks that remained invisible to him. The media attention that established Marcus as a thought leader in the data analytics space had been carefully coordinated through Richardson Industries' public relations network, but his interpretation of this recognition as organic validation of his expertise and market insights prevented him from developing the humility and perspective that would have enabled authentic professional growth and maintained healthy family relationships. The venture capital funding that enabled InsightFlow's rapid expansion from 3-person startup to 27-employee company had come from investors within Richardson Industries' strategic partnership network, but Marcus's assumption that this funding reflected his persuasive presentations and compelling business model prevented him from understanding how venture capital actually operated and what factors determined which entrepreneurs received support for their ambitious plan. The customers who provided InsightFlow with the revenue growth that justified additional investment rounds weren't small businesses who discovered the company's services through marketing efforts and competitive analysis. They were companies within Richardson Industries' business development network coordinated through our partner relations division to provide promising startups with the customer base necessary for sustainable growth, while enabling them to refine their products and services through real-world implementation and feedback. But Marcus's interpretation of this customer acquisition success as validation of his market analysis and product development strategy prevented him from recognizing the strategic coordination that enabled his company's rapid growth and industry recognition. His assumption that business success automatically reflected individual capability and market insight became the foundation for increasingly arrogant attitudes toward anyone who questioned his decisions or suggested alternative approaches to business development and family relationship. Financial success that Marcus achieved through Insight Flow's growth. His personal net worth, increasing from negative student loan debt to over $3 million within 3 years, had been particularly damaging to his character because it provided tangible evidence that seemed to validate his assumptions about individual merit and technological innovation. The downtown San Francisco condominium he purchased, the luxury car he drove, and the expensive restaurants where he entertained clients and investors all reinforced his belief that material success reflected personal worth and professional capability. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of Marcus's financial success was how it transformed his attitude toward family financial relationships and intergenerational support obligation. The monthly $400 contribution that he and his sister Sarah provided for my supposed living expenses, a sum that represented less than what he spent on dinner at high-end restaurants, had gradually become a source of resentment, rather than an expression of family love and responsibility. His conversations with Sarah about my financial situation revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of both my actual circumstances and the nature of family obligations across generations. Marcus's assumption that my gratitude for their modest financial support indicated genuine need, rather than appreciation for family concern, demonstrated how completely his material success had corrupted his understanding of human relationships and social responsibility. The way Marcus discussed my supposed dependence on family assistance with Amanda and his professional colleagues revealed depths of condescension and elder dismissal that would have been unthinkable during his childhood and adolescence. His jokes about supporting the elderly relatives and his complaints about the opportunity costs of family obligations demonstrated how thoroughly his professional training in efficiency and resource optimization had overwhelmed his understanding of love, loyalty, and intergenerational respect. But the most devastating aspect of Marcus's character transformation was his systematic documentation of what he perceived as evidence of my declining mental capabilities and increasing dependence on family support. The notebook where he recorded instances of my confusion about technology, my requests for help with simple tasks, and my apparent gratitude for basic assistance, represented a calculated effort to build justification for more systematic control over my living situation and financial management. The conversations that Marcus had with Sarah about my supposed declining independence and their shared responsibility for protecting me from poor decisions revealed sophisticated planning for elder abuse that was disguised as family concern and protective intervention. His research about legal guardianship procedures, assisted living facilities, and strategies for managing elderly family members' assets demonstrated premeditated exploitation that violated every principle of family respect and intergenerational dignity. The attorney consultations that Marcus initiated to explore legal options for helping elderly family members who showed signs of cognitive decline weren't motivated by genuine concern for my welfare but by strategic calculation about how to access what he assumed were modest assets, while avoiding legal complications that might arise from family financial management responsibilities. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Marcus's planning was his systematic strategy for isolating me from community connections and support networks that might recognize or prevent elder abuse. His suggestions that I should simplify my social activities by reducing involvement in library programs, book clubs, and community volunteer work weren't motivated by concern about my energy levels or transportation challenges. They represented calculated efforts to eliminate outside observers who might notice changes in my circumstances or question family decisions about my living situation and financial management. The relationship between Marcus and his sister Sarah provided crucial support for his elder abuse planning because it created the appearance of family consensus about my declining capabilities and increasing need for protective intervention. Sarah's career as a corporate attorney at a prominent San Francisco law firm had given her sophisticated understanding of legal procedures for managing elderly family members' affairs. While her busy professional schedule provided convenient justification for delegating most direct family interaction responsibilities to Marcus, the monthly family meetings that Marcus organized to coordinate my care and support weren't genuine discussions about my needs and preferences, but strategic planning sessions where he and Sarah developed approaches for gradually assuming control over my living situation, financial management, and social connections. The careful documentation they maintained about my supposed confusion, dependence, and gratitude for family assistance represented systematic preparation for legal proceedings that would override my autonomy and decision-making authority. The most tragic aspect of these family planning sessions was how completely Marcus and Sarah had convinced themselves that their systematic manipulation and control represented loving protection rather than elder abuse and family betrayal. Their assumption that elderly family members automatically required supervision and management, regardless of their actual capabilities and preferences, reflected ageist thinking that enabled systematic exploitation while maintaining the comfortable illusion of family concern and responsible caregiving. The timing of Marcus's plans for escalating family control over my circumstances had been influenced by Insight Flow's need for additional capital investment to support the company's expansion into new market segments and geographic regions. The Series B funding round that he was pursuing would require personal financial guarantees and collateral commitments that exceeded his current assets, making access to family resources an attractive solution for meeting investor requirements and reducing personal financial risk. The build where I lived had become a particular focus of Marcus's financial planning because its current market value of $12.3 million represented exactly the kind of asset that could provide collateral for major business loans while generating rental income that would support both his company's growth, his personal lifestyle expenses. His assumption that I would be grateful for assistance with managing such a valuable property revealed his complete ignorance of my actual financial circumstances and decision-making capabilities. But the most devastating aspect of Marcus's financial planning, his comfortable assumption that elderly family members' assets existed primarily to support younger generations' ambitious projects and lifestyle choices, rather than providing independence and security for the people who had worked their entire lives to accumulate resources for their own retirement needs and community contributions. The casual way that Marcus discussed optimizing my living situation to unlock the building's financial value revealed how thoroughly his business training had corrupted his understanding of family relationships and intergenerational responsibility. His assumption that efficiency and financial optimization should determine elderly family members' housing arrangements demonstrated values that prioritized material advantage over human dignity, family stability, and the kind of community connections that provide meaning and purpose throughout the aging process. As Marcus's plans for family financial optimization became more detailed and urgent, his visits to my apartment became increasingly focused on documenting evidence that would support legal arguments for protective intervention and asset management. The systematic way he photographed areas of my apartment that appeared cluttered or disorganized, his careful notation of any confusion I expressed about bills or technology, and his obvious inventory of furniture and possessions that might have financial value all revealed premeditated preparation for systematic exploitation, disguised as family concern. The March 15th board meeting that I attended while Marcus assumed I was at a routine medical appointment had been particularly significant because Richardson Industries' executive committee was finalizing the strategic planning that would determine Insight Flow's eligibility for continued infrastructure support and potential acquisition consideration. The expansion opportunities that Marcus was desperately seeking through external venture capital were actually already available through our internal development programs, but only for entrepreneurs who demonstrated character and values that aligned with our commitment to social responsibility and community contribution. The irony that Marcus was simultaneously planning to exploit my supposed vulnerability, while desperately needing approval from the company I controlled, created the perfect setup for a lesson about family respect and business ethics that would fundamentally reshape his understanding of success, relationships, and the consequences that follow when professional ambition overwhelms basic human decency and intergenerational respect. The March 15th Richardson Industries board meeting that had occupied my entire afternoon was one of the most consequential strategic planning sessions in the company's 30-year history. The executive committee had gathered in our downtown San Francisco headquarters, a modest 15-story building that appeared unremarkable among the gleaming towers of the financial district, but housed some of the most sophisticated technology infrastructure and strategic intelligence operations on the West Coast, to finalize decisions that would determine the future of cloud computing, enterprise software development, and digital infrastructure investment throughout Silicon Valley and beyond. The agenda for our quarterly review included evaluation of over 200 startup companies that had requested inclusion in Richardson Industries' accelerator program, analysis of emerging technology trends that could disrupt established market segments, and strategic planning for acquisitions that would strengthen our competitive position in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and sustainable technology development. But the most significant item under discussion was the expansion of our venture capital division's investment criteria to include character assessment and community contribution, alongside traditional metrics of technical capability and market potential. The proposal that I had been developing for months involved systematic evaluation of entrepreneurs' treatment of elderly family members, their involvement in community service and social responsibility initiatives, and their demonstrated commitment to values that prioritized long-term social benefit over short-term profit maximization. This character assessment framework would determine which startups received continued infrastructure support, which qualified for major funding rounds, and which companies would be considered for acquisition opportunities that could transform promising entrepreneurs into industry leaders, with resources to influence technological development for decades to come. The discussion among our executive team, 12 accomplished professionals whose expertise spanned technology development, venture capital, regulatory affairs, and strategic intelligence, had been particularly intense, because several board members questioned whether character evaluation represented appropriate criteria for business investment decisions. The traditional venture capital approach emphasized technical innovation, market opportunity, and financial return projections, rather than founders' personal values or social contribution records. But my argument for expanding our evaluation criteria was based on 30 years of experience watching brilliant entrepreneurs build successful companies that ultimately caused tremendous social damage because their founders lacked the character and community perspective necessary for responsible leadership in positions of significant influence and authority. The technology industry's repeated failures to anticipate or prevent negative consequences from social media manipulation, data privacy violation, and algorithmic discrimination all reflected the fundamental problem of providing resources and authority to individuals whose technical capabilities exceeded their wisdom and ethical development. The specific case studies that I presented to support character-based investment criteria included detailed analysis of entrepreneurs who had received traditional venture capital support, despite warning signs about their treatment of employees, family members, and community obligations. Consistent pattern of correlation between disrespectful behavior toward elderly relatives and subsequent ethical failures in business leadership provided compelling evidence that character assessment represented practical business intelligence, rather than irrelevant personal preference or more posturing. The vote to approve my character assessment framework had been unanimous among the executive committee, but implementation would require careful coordination with our venture capital partners, startup accelerator program, and the network of professional investigators who conducted background research on potential investment recipients. The systematic evaluation of entrepreneurs, family relationships, community involvement, and treatment of vulnerable populations would begin immediately with companies currently under consideration for major funding rounds. Marcus's insight flow had been specifically identified as a test case for our new evaluation criteria because his technical capabilities and market success made him an ideal candidate for significant investment. While preliminary character assessment had raised questions about his treatment of family members and his systematic dismissal of intergenerational wisdom and community responsibility, the decision about whether to approve his Series B funding request, provide acquisition, consideration, or discontinue infrastructure support would depend entirely on detailed investigation of his values and behavior patterns. The irony that Marcus was simultaneously planning systematic exploitation of my supposed vulnerability while unknowingly awaiting character evaluation that would determine his company's future had been almost overwhelming during our board discussion. The sophisticated elder abuse strategy that our investigation team had discovered through monitoring his communications and financial planning represented exactly the kind of character evidence that would permanently disqualify him from Richardson Industries' support network. As I drove home from downtown San Francisco through the early evening traffic, reviewing the expansion plans and investment criteria that would determine which entrepreneurs received opportunities to build the next generation of technology company, I felt optimistic about creating frameworks that could support innovation while ensuring that business success remained connected to social responsibility and community values that honored wisdom and experience alongside youth and technical capability. The Richardson Industries headquarters had left behind, represented 30 years of careful strategic development, designed to maintain operational effectiveness while protecting my privacy and enabling the kind of long-term planning that required complete separation between my public identity as a simple retiree and my professional role as chief executive of one of the world's most influential technology investment organizations. The building's modest external appearance and generic corporate signage concealed sophisticated security systems, quantum encrypted communication networks, and strategic intelligence capabilities that rivaled what government agencies used for national security operations. The executive team that had participated in our board meeting included professionals whose backgrounds spanned advanced computer science, international business development, regulatory affairs, and strategic intelligence gathering, but whose shared commitment to responsible technology development had been carefully evaluated through the same character assessment processes that we were now implementing for potential investment recipients. The collaborative decision-making culture that characterized Richardson Industries leadership reflected my conviction that sustainable business success required diverse perspectives and ethical frameworks that prevented the kind of groupthink and moral blind spots that had enabled so many technology companies to cause unintended social damage. When I arrived at my Mission District apartment building at 6, I expected to spend the evening reviewing implementation details for our character assessment program and preparing for follow-up conversations with venture capital partners about modified evaluation criteria that would influence startup investment decisions throughout Silicon Valley. The strategic planning documents that I needed to analyze included detailed protocols for family relationship investigation, community involvement, verification, and systematic evaluation of entrepreneurs' treatment of elderly relatives and vulnerable populations. Instead, what I encountered became the defining moment that revealed Marcus's true character and triggered the most comprehensive demonstration of hidden authority that any family manipulator had ever experienced,
when their systematic exploitation plans collided with the reality of exactly who they were attempting to victimize. The sound of Marcus's voice coming from my living room, as I entered through the building's rear entrance, immediately indicated that something unusual was happening, since he rarely visited without advance notice, and had never used his spare key to enter my apartment when I wasn't present. The confident, almost aggressive tone of his conversations suggested he was conducting important business discussions, but the setting and timing created immediate suspicion about what had motivated this unexpected visit to my supposedly modest retirement home. What I heard as I paused in my small kitchen, still wearing my professional attire from the board meeting, would shatter every assumption I had maintained about Marcus's character and force me to confront the devastating reality that my nephew had become exactly the kind of person whose system elder abuse and family exploitation represented the most dangerous combination of technical capability and moral failure that our character assessment program was designed to identify and exclude from positions of authority and influence. The casual cruelty and calculated manipulation that I overheard during the next 20 minutes would provide documented evidence that justified the most severe consequences available through Richardson Industries' network of business relationships, legal partnerships, and strategic intelligence capabilities that could transform comfortable assumptions about elderly vulnerability into the most expensive lesson about family respect that any ungrateful relative had ever received. "Listen, Jason, I'm telling you this is the perfect timing," Marcus was saying into his phone with the kind of professional enthusiasm he used when discussing promising business opportunities. "The old lady is completely out of it now. She can barely figure out how to use the microwave, and yesterday she asked me 3 times to explain what Wi-Fi means. There's no way she's going to understand what we're doing or be able to stop it once we get the legal paperwork processed."
In suburban Phoenix, 43-year-old Sarah Mitchell discovered an old photograph that would unravel her entire reality. What began as spring cleaning became a journey into her past when she noticed something impossible in the background. Before we continue, drop a comment if you've ever experienced déjà vu. The phrase, "the old lady," delivered with such casual dismissal, hit me like a physical blow. Not just because of its fundamental disrespect, but because of the clinical detachment with which Marcus was discussing me as if I were an obstacle to overcome, rather than a family member who had supported his development throughout his entire life. The reference to my supposed confusion about basic technology revealed that he had been systematically cataloging what he perceived as evidence of cognitive decline, building a case to justify whatever exploitation he was planning. "Yeah, exactly. She's been getting worse every month," Marcus continued, his voice growing more animated as he warmed to his topic. "Last week she couldn't remember how to log into her email account, and she got completely confused when I tried to show her how to use the banking app on her phone. My sister Sarah thinks we're probably looking at early-stage dementia, which actually makes the timing perfect for what we need to do." The way Marcus characterized my occasional requests for assistance with rapidly changing technology as evidence of dementia revealed sophisticated understanding of how ageist assumptions could be manipulated to justify systematic exploitation of elderly family members. His collaboration with Sarah in documenting my supposed cognitive decline demonstrated coordinated planning that extended far beyond individual opportunism and represented systematic family conspiracy designed to override my autonomy and decision-making authority. "The beautiful thing is that she actually trusts us completely," Marcus said with obvious satisfaction that made my stomach turn. "She thinks we're these devoted family members who are just concerned about her welfare and want to help her manage her finances better. She has no idea that Sarah and I have been documenting every instance of confusion or memory problems for the past 18 months. Our attorney says we've got a bulletproof case for legal guardianship based on diminished capacity." The revelation that Marcus and Sarah had been deliberate documenting my supposed incompetence for 18 months represented a level of premeditated elder abuse that was almost impossible to comprehend from people I had helped raise and support throughout their educational and professional development. The fact that they had already consulted with attorneys about legal strategies for overriding my autonomy indicated systematic planning that had been developing for years while they maintained facades of family affection and concern. Marcus, you have to understand what we're dealing with here. The voice on the phone responded. Apparently, Jason, whom I couldn't immediately identify but whose casual participation in elder abuse planning suggested he was either another family member or a professional associate comfortable with systematic exploitation of vulnerable population. This isn't just about getting access to some modest retirement savings. Your aunt's been sitting on property that's worth serious money, and there could be other assets that she's been hiding from the family. The assumption that I was hiding assets from family members revealed the fundamental entitlement mentality that enabled Marcus's systematic planning for financial exploitation. His conviction that elderly family members were obligated to disclose their complete financial circumstances to adult relatives who had never demonstrated genuine interest in my welfare demonstrated the transactional approach to family relationships that treated parental and extended family resources as inheritance opportunities, rather than recognizing the autonomy and privacy that elderly people deserve to maintain throughout their retirement years. Jason, trust me, I've done the research, Marcus replied with obvious pride in his investigative efforts. The building alone is worth at least $12 million based on recent comparable sales in the Mission District, but I think there's a lot more cash and investments that she's keeping secret. You should see how confused she gets when I try to ask about her financial situation. It's like she doesn't even understand what money she has or where it's invested. The way Marcus interpreted my discretion about financial matters as evidence of confusion, rather than privacy, revealed his systematic misunderstanding of the difference between cognitive decline and appropriate boundaries around personal information. His assumption that elderly relatives should automatically provide complete financial disclosure to family members who requested such information demonstrated the kind of boundary violations that preceded systematic elder abuse and family exploitation. Look, I've been patient with this situation for way too long already, Marcus continued, his voice taking on an edge of frustration that suggested he had been building resentment about my continued independence and control over my own affairs. Every month that goes by is money down the drain while she sits in that apartment doing basically nothing except reading books and feeding pigeons. I've got real business opportunities that need capital investment, and it's ridiculous that family money is just sitting there earning pathetic interest rates when it could be generating serious returns through strategic technology investment. The bitterness with which Marcus described my community activities and personal interests as basically nothing revealed depths of dismissal and elder devaluation that went far beyond simple impatience with generational differences. His characterization of my financial assets as family money that he deserved access to for business investments demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of both ownership rights and family obligations that enabled systematic exploitation while maintaining the comfortable illusion of intergenerational support and resource sharing. No, Jason, you don't understand how perfect this timing is, Marcus said with growing excitement that was disturbing to witness. I've been working on this Series B funding round for Insight Flow for months, and I've finally got investors who are seriously interested. The only thing holding me back is demonstrating sufficient personal financial commitment and collateral backing. Once I get control of Dorothy's assets, I can leverage that into the kind of investment portfolio that will make Insight Flow worth $50 million within 2 years. The casual way Mark discussed getting control of my assets revealed his comfortable assumption that elderly family members' financial independence was temporary and that adult relatives had inherent rights to parental wealth regardless of the circumstances or the quality of family relationship. His focus on leveraging my supposed assets for his business ventures demonstrated a transactional approach to family that treated elder exploitation as strategic business development, rather than recognizing the moral and legal violations involved in systematic financial abuse. The tech industry is exploding right now, especially with AI and machine learning applications, Marcus explained with professional enthusiasm that he had never shown when discussing my interest or concern. Insight Flow is positioned perfectly to capture market share in data analytics and predictive modeling. But I need serious capital backing to compete with established companies that have been dominating these market segments for years. The irony of Marcus's complaints about established companies dominating market segments was almost unbearable. given that Richardson Industries had been quietly creating opportunities for him to access exactly the kind of strategic support and market advantages that he was describing as obstacles to his success. His assumption that he needed to overcome institutional barriers through family financial exploitation revealed his complete ignorance of the support network that had been facilitating his business development and industry recognition for years. Listen, Jason. Here's the thing that makes this whole situation absolutely perfect, Marcus said, lowering his voice slightly as if sharing confidential strategic information. Dorothy's got this sweet, confused old lady act that makes everyone think she's just a harmless retiree who needs family protection. But the reality is that she's been accumulating assets for decades without any clear plan for how to use them productively. She's exactly the kind of elderly person who needs adult children to step in and optimize her financial management before she makes decisions that could waste everything she's worked for. The way Marcus described my community involvement and modest lifestyle as evidence that I lacked clear plans for productive asset utilization revealed his fundamental inability to recognize that elderly people might have values and priorities that extended beyond material accumulation and financial optimization. His assumption that my charitable giving, community service and traditional family values represented poor judgment that justified family intervention demonstrated the kind of paternalistic thinking that enabled systematic exploitation while maintaining the pretense of protective concern. The absolutely perfect part of this whole situation is that Dorothy actually trusts me more than she trusts Sarah right now, Marcus continued with bitter irony that revealed his systematic manipulation of family relationships for strategic advantage. She thinks I'm this devoted nephew who really cares about her welfare and wants to help her navigate the complexities of modern financial management. She's always asking me for advice about technology and business matters, because she assumes I understand things that are too complicated for her to handle independently. The pain of hearing Marcus acknowledge that I relied on his guidance while simultaneously planning to exploit that trust for financial gain revealed how completely he had corrupted the authentic family relationship that had once provided mutual support and intergenerational wisdom sharing. His interpretation of my requests for technological assistance as evidence of general incompetence rather than recognizing them as normal adaptation challenges demonstrated systematic misunderstanding of the difference between unfamiliarity with new systems and actual cognitive decline. Here's what I'm thinking, Jason, Marcus said, his voice taking on the strategic planning tone he used when developing business proposals. We move fast to establish legal guardianship based on her demonstrated diminished capacity. Transfer the property and liquid assets into a family trust that I control as primary beneficiary. And then we can optimize the investment strategy to generate returns that will support both her care needs and my business development requirements. The calculating manner in which Marcus discussed establishing legal guardianship over me, combined with his casual assumption that he should control family trust assets for his business purposes, revealed a level of premeditated elder abuse that was almost impossible to process emotionally. His assumption that he could manipulate legal systems to override my autonomy while using my assets for his entrepreneurial ambitions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how elder abuse could be disguised as family protection and responsible financial management. Look, I know this might sound harsh to people who don't understand the business realities we're dealing with, Marcus continued with defensive justification that revealed his awareness that his plans involved moral violations that required rationalization. But Dorothy's not going to live forever, and every year we wait is money that could be working productively instead of sitting in conservative investments that barely keep pace with inflation. I've calculated that if we can access her assets within the next 6 months, we can probably triple their value through strategic technology investments and real estate development. The cold calculation with which Marcus discussed my mortality and the potential financial benefits of gaining access to my assets revealed a level of emotional detachment that transformed family relationships into business opportunities. His focus on investment returns and financial optimization, combined with his impatience about accessing assets before my natural death,
demonstrated values that prioritized material gain over family love, respect, and the basic human dignity that elderly relatives deserved from their adult family member. The timing couldn't be better because Dorothy's been acting more confused lately, and I think the isolation since Charles died has really affected her mental state. Marcus continued with what sounded like satisfaction rather than concern about my supposed cognitive decline. She gets overwhelmed trying to understand bills and financial statements. She needs help with anything involving computers or smartphones, and she's constantly asking me to explain things that should be obvious to any competent adult. The way Marcus interpreted my occasional requests for assistance with rapidly changing technology and complex financial documents as evidence of general incompetence revealed his systematic misunderstanding of the difference between unfamiliarity with new systems and actual cognitive decline. His assumption that elderly people who needed help adapting to technological changes were mentally incompetent demonstrated the kind of ageist thinking that enabled elder abuse and justified the systematic dismissal of elderly autonomy and decision-making authority. Jason, you should see how pathetic it is when she tries to use modern technology, Marcus said with cruel amusement that revealed depths of disrespect and family betrayal that were almost impossible to comprehend. Last week she spent 20 minutes trying to figure out how to answer a video call on her tablet, and she accidentally deleted a bunch of photos because she couldn't understand the interface. It would be funny if it wasn't so obvious that she's completely incapable of managing complex financial decisions or understanding modern business opportunity. The mockery in Marcus's voice when he described my struggles with unfamiliar technology revealed a fundamental lack of empathy and respect that went far beyond simple impatience with generational difference. His amusement at my learning difficulties, combined with his interpretation of normal adaptation challenges as evidence of general incompetence, demonstrated the kind of cruel dismissiveness that justified systematic exploitation of elderly vulnerability and family trust. As I listened to Marcus continue his phone conversation, systematically planning my financial exploitation while mocking my supposed incompetence and celebrating my isolation and vulnerability, I realized that this moment represented the complete destruction of every assumption I had maintained about his character, values, and respect for family relationships. The systematic planning he was describing, combined with the cruel mockery of my community involvement and the calculated exploitation of family trust, revealed that my nephew had become exactly the kind of person whose moral failures and elder abuse mentality represented the most dangerous combination of technical capability and ethical bankruptcy. The beautiful thing is that Dorothy has no idea how much money she's actually sitting on or how to protect it from people who might try to take advantage of her situation. Marcus continued with obvious satisfaction about my supposed vulnerability. She thinks her little retirement savings and Social Security make her financially secure, but she's completely naive about investment strategies, tax optimization, and the kind of estate planning that could preserve wealth for future generations, instead of letting it get consumed by healthcare costs and poor financial decisions. The irony of Marcus's assumption that I was naive about financial management and investment strategies was almost overwhelming, given that his entire career had been built on opportunities created through my professional networks and strategic business relationships. His conviction that he understood financial optimization better than I did, despite his complete ignorance of the business empire that had been supporting his success, revealed depths of arrogance and self-deception that were almost impossible to comprehend. But the most devastating aspect of this conversation was Marcus's obvious assumption that elderly family members existed primarily to provide financial resources for adult children's ambitions, rather than recognizing parents and relatives as individuals deserving respect, autonomy, and consideration of their own interests and priorities throughout their retirement years. His systematic strategy for manipulating family relationships to access elder assets revealed values that prioritized material advancement over intergenerational respect and family dignity. As I heard Marcus moving around my living room, obviously conducting some kind of search through my personal belongings while maintaining his phone conversation, I realized that this moment provided the perfect opportunity to begin testing exactly how much he actually knew about the technology industry he claimed to understand. while gradually introducing information that would challenge his assumptions about my knowledge and capabilities without immediately revealing the complete scope of my professional authority and business influence. The careful balance I needed to maintain involved demonstrating enough sophisticated understanding to justify skeptical questions, while concealing the true extent of my technological expertise and industry leadership until the appropriate moment for complete revelation. The strategic approach I decided to implement would systematically expose Marcus's ignorance about fundamental aspects of the business environment he thought he understood, while building toward the devastating demonstration of hidden authority that would transform his comfortable assumptions about elderly vulnerability into the most expensive lesson about family respect that any ungrateful relative had ever received. The sound of papers rustling and drawers opening in my living room created a soundtrack of betrayal that was almost impossible to process emotionally. Each violation of my privacy represented not just immediate disrespect for personal boundaries, but the systematic destruction of family trust that had taken decades to build and that I had always assumed would provide the foundation for Marcus's character development and understanding of intergenerational responsibility and respect. Perfect, I heard Marcus mutter to himself as he apparently discovered something he considered valuable among my papers. This is exactly what Jason said we'd need to establish the complete financial picture and demonstrate the scope of assets we're dealing with. The satisfaction in Marcus's voice when he found whatever documentation he was seeking revealed that his search wasn't random curiosity, but rather a targeted investigation designed to advance specific legal and financial objectives that he had been planning for months. His reference to Jason's guidance about establishing the financial picture suggested that this reconnaissance mission was part of a coordinated strategy developed with professional assistance from people who specialized in elder financial exploitation. As I prepared to announce my presence and begin the systematic process of revealing exactly how wrong his assumptions about my knowledge, capabilities, and authority actually were, I realized that this moment would determine not only the future of our family relationship but also the trajectory of his entire career in the technology industry that I had spent 30 years building and controlling. The choice I faced wasn't simply about protecting my own autonomy and dignity from systematic family exploitation, but about demonstrating the consequences that followed when technical capabilities and business ambitions developed without the character foundation necessary for responsible leadership and community contribution that honored wisdom and experience alongside innovation and youth. As I heard Marcus conclude his phone conversation and begin systematically searching through my personal belongings, I made a decision that would transform this moment from family betrayal into the most comprehensive demonstration of hidden authority that Silicon Valley had ever witnessed. The systematic elder abuse planning I had overheard would soon collide with the reality of exactly who Marcus had been attempting to exploit. Taking a deep breath and removing my coat from the Richardson Industries board meeting, I decided to enter my living room as if returning from a routine medical appointment, giving Marcus the opportunity to lie about his presence, while I systematically tested his knowledge of the technology industry he claimed to understand. "Mark," I called out in the confused but pleased tone I had perfected for family interactions. "Is that you, sweetheart? I didn't expect to see you tonight." The sound from the living room suggested Marcus had been startled and was scrambling to conceal evidence of his unauthorized search. The brief silence indicated he was calculating how to explain his presence and access to papers I had never given him permission to examine. "Oh, hi, Aunt Dorothy," Marcus replied, his voice carefully projecting casual innocence. "I hope you don't mind that I let myself in. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on you, but when you didn't answer, I got worried and used my spare key." "That's so thoughtful of you, dear," I replied, maintaining the grateful tone that reinforced his assumptions about my emotional neediness. "I was just coming back from a doctor's appointment downtown, but I'm so glad you stopped by because I've been thinking about something you might help me understand." As I entered the living room, observing the subtle signs that Marcus had been searching through my papers, I realized this moment provided the perfect opportunity to begin testing exactly how much he actually knew about the technology industry supporting his career. "Of course, Aunt Dorothy," Marcus replied with manufactured warmth. What's on your mind? You know I'm always happy to help you understand anything about technology or business that might be confusing. Well, dear, I was reading about technology companies, and I came across a name I thought you might recognize, I said, settling into my armchair. Have you ever heard of Richardson Industries? The article mentioned cloud computing and software development, which sounded like your company's work. Marcus paused slightly, confusion crossing his face as he processed my question. The uncertainty suggested limited understanding of the organization's actual scope and influence throughout Silicon Valley's technology ecosystem. Richardson Industries, Marcus repeated, trying to place the name. I think I might have heard of them, but I'm not sure what they do specifically. Are they some kind of consulting firm or software development company? Oh, they're much more than a consulting company, sweetheart, I replied with gentle correction. From what I read, they're actually an investment consortium that owns or controls significant technology infrastructure throughout Northern California. They seem to determine which startup companies receive the support they need to succeed in competitive markets. Marcus's obvious discomfort with my apparent knowledge of sophisticated business concepts suggested he was questioning his assumptions about my limited understanding of commercial activity. I didn't realize you were interested in technology companies and investment dynamics, Aunt Dorothy, Marcus said with obvious surprise. Where did you learn about Richardson Industries and their role in the startup ecosystem? Well, dear, when you've lived in San Francisco as long as I have, you hear things about the local business community, I replied with modest understatement. Plus, some people I meet at community events have family in the technology industry, so we discuss market trends during social conversations. That's actually really interesting, Marcus replied with renewed respect for my apparent business awareness. Maybe you could help me understand more about Richardson Industries and how they might affect opportunities companies like mine are pursuing. I'd be happy to share what I've learned, sweetheart, I replied, concealing the devastating irony of being asked to explain the empire I had built. From what I understand, Richardson Industries is quite selective about which technology companies they support. They prioritize entrepreneurs who demonstrate technical excellence, business potential, and strong character with commitment to community values. Character and community value. Marcus asked with curiosity about criteria extending beyond traditional business qualifications. That seems unusual for a technology investment firm. How do they evaluate those factors? Well, dear, they're particularly interested in how entrepreneurs treat employees, family relationships, community involvement, and respect for elderly wisdom and intergenerational relationships, I explained, watching Marcus's expression as I described criteria directly related to his behavior. The mention of respect for elderly wisdom and intergenerational relationships caused visible change in Marcus's demeanor, suggesting growing understanding that his treatment of elderly family members might have professional implications. Intergenerational relationship, Marcus repeated with obvious concern. How would an investment consortium evaluate something like that? Family relationships seem difficult to assess objectively. Oh, Marcus, you'd be surprised how comprehensive these organizations are when researching people they're considering for major investment relationships, I replied with knowing tone. They have sophisticated methods for evaluating character, including detailed background interviews with family members, community references, and systematic assessment of how potential partners treat elderly parents and family obligations. Marcus's growing discomfort revealed his awareness that his elder abuse planning could potentially be discovered and evaluated by industry decision-makers, whose support he needed. Background interviews with family members, Marcus asked with obvious alarm. That seems like privacy concern. What questions would they ask family members about someone's character? Well, sweetheart, they're primarily interested in basic character indicators that predict reliability and ethical behavior, I explained with deliberate vagueness that increased his anxiety. Things like honesty in family financial matters, respect for elderly parents, fulfillment of family obligations, and traditional values that indicate trustworthiness in business relationships. Each criterion I mentioned directly contradicted Marcus's systematic approach to family relationships and elder abuse planning. His recognition that his behavior would fail every evaluation standard revealed growing awareness that his treatment of me could destroy business opportunities. Aunt Dorothy, you seem to know quite a lot about how these business organizations operate, Marcus said with growing suspicion. Are you sure you learned all this just from community discussions and newspaper articles? This moment represented the perfect opportunity to begin the systematic revelation that would transform Marcus's comfortable assumptions about elderly vulnerability into devastating recognition of his miscalculation. Actually, Marcus, I said, setting down my reading glasses and looking directly into his eyes with expression hinting at depths of knowledge and authority exceeding anything he had previously observed. There's something I need to tell you about Richardson Industries and my understanding of how they operate. My knowledge isn't based on community discussions or newspaper articles. The change in my tone caused Marcus to pause completely, his attention fully focused on what I was preparing to reveal. His obvious nervousness suggested he was sensing fundamental changes in our dynamic. You see, sweetheart, I continued, rising and walking to the secretary where Marcus had been searching earlier. My familiarity with Richardson Industries operations isn't based on external observation. It's based on 30 years of serving as the founder, CEO, and majority shareholder of the organization.
Complete silence followed, as Marcus processed the impossibility of what he thought he had heard. His expression shifted through confusion, disbelief, and growing horror, as implications began penetrating his understanding. "What did you just say?" Marcus asked in a whisper. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. "I said that I am the founder, CEO, and majority shareholder of Richardson Industries," I repeated, clearly, retrieving documents that would demonstrate the scope of the technology empire he had never suspected. The investment consortium that determines which startups receive infrastructure support, venture capital funding, and acquisition opportunities throughout Silicon Valley is actually the organization I built over 3 decades. As I placed the folder on the coffee table, Marcus's face went through expressions reflecting his systematic processing of information that challenged every assumption about my identity and authority. The corporate documents provided immediate visual confirmation that this wasn't elderly confusion, but factual revelation of business authority exceeding his most ambitious dreams. "That's impossible," Marcus said, reaching for documents with trembling hands. "You live in a small apartment. You get confused by smartphones and need help with online banking. You spend time reading books and feeding pigeons." "Marcus, dear," I replied with patient tone. "The modest lifestyle and occasional requests for technological assistance aren't because I'm incapable of understanding modern systems. They're strategic choices designed to maintain privacy and protect my ability to evaluate entrepreneurs without complications from public recognition." As Marcus examined documents confirming my corporate authority, the corporate resolutions naming me as CEO, bank statements showing 11-figure balances, and property deeds listing Richardson Industries as owner of critical infrastructure, provided overwhelming evidence that his supposed elderly victim was actually the industry leader whose approval he needed. "This can't be real," Marcus muttered, reflecting psychological shock when fundamental assumptions about reality are overthrown. "If you control Richardson Industries, then I control the cloud computing infrastructure that enables InsightFlow to process data for your clients, the software licensing agreements providing your development team with enterprise-level capabilities, the venture capital networks that approved your funding round, and the strategic partnerships that created opportunities for your business development." I completed his sentence while observing his growing comprehension. The revelation that I owned the infrastructure his company depended on caused Marcus to sink into the nearest chair, his earlier confidence completely abandoned as he confronted the devastating reality. His struggle to process the complete inversion of power dynamics revealed his understanding that his systematic elder abuse planning had targeted the person whose authority determined his continued success. "InsightFlow's cloud services Marcus said slowly, his voice reflecting systematic realization that every aspect of his success had been built on foundation I controlled. The infrastructure hosting, data processing capabilities, security protocols, that's all coordinated through Richardson Industries' technology division to support promising entrepreneurs who demonstrate both innovation potential and strong character. Retrieving additional documents demonstrating the support network ensuring his success while he planned my exploitation. The favorable service rates, saving your company over $300,000 annually, technical support enabling rapid scaling, and security protocols protecting your intellectual property. Marcus's expression revealed his understanding that his apparent expertise and business success reflected comprehensive assistance rather than individual achievement. His comprehension that the elderly victim he had planned to exploit was actually his hidden benefactor created devastating irony, transforming family betrayal into professional suicide. But why? Marcus asked with obvious desperation. Why would you support my company without telling me? Why hide your identity from your own nephew? Because, Marcus, the goal was always to help you develop authentic capabilities and genuine success you could be proud of achieving through your own talents. I explained with patient tone. The support I coordinated was designed to remove obstacles and create opportunities, not make success automatic. You were supposed to build character and family values alongside professional skill. The emphasis on character development caused Marcus to look away, his obvious shame revealing recognition that his systematic elder abuse planning represented exactly the moral failure that justified withdrawal of support and redirection of opportunities to more deserving recipients. The tragic irony of your situation, sweetheart, I continued, reaching for my phone and accessing the encrypted communication system connecting me to Richardson Industries network, is that your startup expansion dreams were actually going to be approved through our development initiative that the board finalized this afternoon. The Series B funding you've been desperately pursuing was already available through our internal investment programs, but only for entrepreneurs who demonstrated both capability and character justifying long-term partnership. The revelation that his expansion opportunities had been real and available through my organization caused Marcus's expression to shift from shame to growing horror as he understood the scope of what his elder abuse planning had cost him. His recognition that the business success he had been trying to secure through family exploitation was actually dependent on the family respect he had systematically abandoned created the most devastating lesson about consequence. Marcus, I said, placing my phone on the coffee table showing the Richardson Industries executive interface. I need you to understand exactly what you've done and what it means for your future. The conversation I overheard this evening, where you discussed establishing legal guardianship to steal my assets while dismissing my community involvement as worthless, was automatically recorded through security systems protecting my home and operations. Marcus's face went through expression, reflecting his growing comprehension that his systematic family betrayal hadn't just damaged our relationship, it had created legal evidence of character failures that would permanently disqualify him from Richardson Industries' support networks and destroy his professional opportunity. Throughout Silicon Valley's interconnected business community, the recording of your phone conversation along with photographic documentation of your unauthorized search through my belongings provides sufficient evidence of elder abuse and family exploitation to permanently blacklist you from Richardson Industries' investment network. I continue. But this isn't just about my personal reaction, it's about systematic character evaluation determining which entrepreneurs receive resources necessary for sustainable success. The mention of systematic character evaluation caused Marcus to scan the room desperately, hoping to identify security equipment that had documented his elder abuse plan. His obvious panic about audio and video evidence revealed his understanding that his actions had legal implications beyond simple family relationship damage. As of this moment, Insight Flow's access to Richardson Industries infrastructure, software licensing, and technical support has been suspended pending resolution of character assessment violations, I explained, displaying real-time operational data showing how completely his business depended on infrastructure I control. Your company has 72 hours to secure alternative infrastructure before complete service termination, I continued, watching Marcus's face as he comprehended immediate practical consequences. The transition period provides sufficient time to explain to your employees and investors why Insight Flow is losing access to technology infrastructure that enabled your competitive advantages. The devastating recognition that his company would collapse within 3 days unless he could secure alternative support created the perfect opportunity for the final demonstration of how completely his assumptions about elderly vulnerability had been transformed into the most expensive lesson about family respect. However, I continued, observing Marcus's obvious desperation, I'm not interested in destroying your life. Instead, I'm offering something more valuable than the shortcuts you were planning. Richardson Industries operates a character development and rehabilitation program specifically for entrepreneurs who have demonstrated technical capability but whose character failures have disqualified them from traditional investment consideration. As Marcus examined the program requirements, extensive community service with elderly populations, family relationship counseling, business ethics education, and ongoing supervision by character development professionals, his expression revealed systematic understanding that redemption would require genuine effort and fundamental change. The community service component includes 60 hours monthly of direct assistance to elderly community members throughout the Bay Area, I explained, watching his reaction to requirements that would force him to confront his ageist assumption. You'll be working with the kind of elderly volunteers and community leaders you've been dismissing as irrelevant obstacles. But there's something else you need to understand, I continued, reaching for legal documents. Your systematic planning for my financial exploitation has permanently disqualified you from inheritance consideration under my estate planning and family trust. The mention of inheritance disqualification caused Marcus's face to go pale as he confronted reality that his elder abuse planning had eliminated his long-term financial expectations from family wealth. However, I said, allowing the inheritance consequences to be processed, there is someone who has consistently demonstrated family values and elderly respect that deserve recognition through inheritance opportunities and business partnership. I reached for my phone and placed a call Marcus could hear through speaker function, enabling him to witness the conversation that would complete his understanding of how thoroughly his family exploitation had backfired. Sarah Chen Martinez, I said when the call connected. I hope I'm not calling too late. I wanted to let you know about significant changes in family arrangements and business opportunities that I think you'll find very interesting. The mention of Sarah's name caused Marcus to sit upright with obvious alarm as he began understanding that his sister was about to become the beneficiary of family and business opportunities his elder abuse planning had forfeited. Yes, sweetheart. I'm planning to modify my estate planning to designate you as primary beneficiary of both family property and my business interests in Richardson Industries, I confirmed while observing Marcus's growing comprehension. Your completion of law school and work in corporate ethics have demonstrated exactly the character and professional capability that should be rewarded through intergenerational support. As I concluded the conversation with Sarah, Marcus sat in stunned silence, processing the complete transformation of his expectations and systematic redirection of family opportunities based on character assessment and family values demonstration. The story of how a cruel nephew learned that calling his elderly aunt a pathetic leech living off family charity while planning her systematic financial exploitation could cost him his $50 million technology company and force him to literally beg for basic infrastructure access at the reception desk of the Fortune built became the most expensive lesson about elderly respect and character importance that any ungrateful relative had ever received. Sometimes the most powerful lesson you can teach manipulative family members is that elderly wisdom and business authority aren't optional conveniences that disappear when they become inconvenient for adult children's advancement plans. The nephew who called me a pathetic leech discovered that respect for elderly family members isn't just moral obligation, it's practical necessity for anyone who wants to survive in industries where character assessment determines eligibility for opportunities and support systems that can transform entrepreneurial dreams into sustainable reality. Devastating failure. Remember, family relationships built on genuine respect and intergenerational appreciation create foundations for mutual support and authentic achievement, while manipulation and elder abuse destroy not only family bonds, but also the character development necessary for meaningful success and community contribution. The technology empire that could have supported Marcus's authentic dreams became a tool for teaching him that elderly respect matters more than business advance, and that sometimes the most valuable lesson any family can provide is understanding that character determines destiny in ways transcending individual capability and professional ambition. 6 months after Marcus discovered that his pathetic leech aunt was actually the CEO of Richardson Industries, the transformation in his understanding of family respect and genuine success had been profound, but came at a cost that would forever change both his business prospects and his character. The Richardson Industries headquarters reception desk, where Marcus now sat every Tuesday morning waiting to submit his weekly character development progress reports, had become a symbol of how completely his arrogant assumptions about elderly vulnerability had backfired. The same building where he had once imagined himself as a successful entrepreneur seeking investment support was now the place where he reported as a rehabilitation program participant. Learning that authentic success required foundations of respect and humility he had never developed. "Mr. Richardson will see you now," the receptionist announced with professional courtesy that couldn't quite mask the irony of the situation. Marcus Chen, the nephew who had planned systematic elder abuse, was now literally begging for mercy at the front desk of the company his useless old aunt had built into a fortune. The conference room where Marcus presented his monthly progress reports was the same space where Richardson Industries' executive committee made decisions about venture capital allocation and strategic partnerships that shaped Silicon Valley's future. But instead of pitching innovative business plans, Marcus now submitted documentation of his community service hours, family relationship counseling progress, and developing understanding of why elderly wisdom deserved respect rather than exploitation. "Marcus, your community service supervisor reports that you've been consistently exceeding the required 60 hours monthly," Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the Character Development Program Director, noted while reviewing his file. "Can you explain what motivated you to increase your commitment to elderly assistance beyond the program requirements?" The question forced Marcus to confront how completely his perspective had changed since beginning the rehabilitation process. "Rodriguez, I started volunteering extra hours because I realized how much I had to learn from the elderly people I was supposed to be helping. Ms. Patterson, who's 93 and teaches me about computer programming concepts I never understood, has more patience and wisdom than most of the Silicon Valley executives I used to admire." The admission that he was learning from elderly community members rather than simply fulfilling mandatory service requirements represented exactly the kind of character development that the program was designed to achieve. Marcus's growing recognition that aging brought wisdom rather than irrelevance demonstrated fundamental changes in his worldview that extended far beyond professional rehabilitation. "The most humbling part," Marcus continued, "is realizing how many elderly people I've been helping have accomplished things in their careers that I'm still trying to achieve. Yesterday I spent 4 hours teaching smartphone basics to a retired NASA engineer who helped design the software systems that got humans to the moon. The irony that I was explaining technology to someone who created the foundation for everything I think I understand about innovation overwhelming." Dr. Rodriguez made notes about Marcus's developing empathy and perspective, but the real test of his character transformation would come from the person whose systematic exploitation had triggered his disqualification from Richardson Industries' support network in the first place. Through the conference room's glass wall, Marcus could see Dorothy Richardson approaching, not the confused elderly woman he had dismissed as a burden, but the technology industry leader whose authority and vision had created opportunities for thousands of entrepreneurs while maintaining values that prioritized character alongside capability. "Good morning, Marcus," Dorothy said as she entered the conference room, her presence commanding immediate respect from everyone present. The difference between her authoritative professional demeanor and the modest persona she had maintained during family visits was a constant reminder of how completely Marcus had misunderstood both her capabilities and his own dependence on her support system. "Good morning, Aunt Dorothy," Marcus replied, rising from his chair with genuine respect that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. "Thank you for taking time to review my progress. I know how busy you are with the company's expansion into sustainable technology initiatives." The fact that Marcus now knew about Richardson Industries' business activities and spoke about them with informed appreciation rather than dismissive ignorance represented significant progress in his character development. His acknowledgement of Dorothy's professional responsibilities demonstrated growing understanding that elderly family members might have complex lives and important work that extended far beyond the simplified assumptions he had previously maintained. "Marcus, I've been reviewing your community service reports and the feedback from elderly residents you've been assisting," Dorothy said,
settling into her chair with the executive presence that had guided Richardson Industries for 3 decades. The consistent theme in their comments is that you've developed genuine patience, authentic interest in their experiences, and real appreciation for the wisdom that comes with age and experience. The positive feedback represented more than successful program completion. It demonstrated that Marcus's character development had achieved the kind of authentic transformation that justified consideration for limited business relationship. But Dorothy's next words would determine whether his rehabilitation had been sufficient to warrant even basic professional opportunities. However, Dorothy continued, character development isn't measured by temporary behavior changes during supervised program. It's demonstrated through consistent choices when nobody's monitoring your actions and when those choices require personal sacrifice rather than external rewards. The statement created tension in the conference room, as everyone understood that Marcus's future, both professional and personal, would be determined by Dorothy's assessment of whether his transformation represented genuine character growth or strategic performance designed to recover lost opportunity. Rodriguez has recommended that you've earned consideration for limited reintegration into Richardson Industries network, Dorothy explained, but with permanent conditions that reflect the serious nature of elder abuse and family exploitation. Your systematic planning to steal my assets and override my autonomy represents exactly the kind of character failure that cannot be simply forgotten or easily forgiven. Marcus's expression revealed his understanding that consequences for his elder abuse planning would be permanent, regardless of his character development progress. The recognition that some mistakes created lasting impacts that extended far beyond temporary punishment provided crucial lessons about the importance of treating family relationships with respect and dignity from the beginning rather than assuming that damage could always be repaired through subsequent good behavior. Insight Flow will be eligible for basic infrastructure support at standard commercial rates, no subsidies, no preferential treatment, and no access to the strategic partnerships that enabled your previous success, Dorothy continued. Your company's survival will depend entirely on your ability to compete based on actual merit rather than hidden assistance that you never recognized or appreciated. The terms Dorothy offered represented a chance for professional survival, but eliminated the competitive advantages that had enabled Insight Flow's rapid growth and industry recognition. Marcus would need to rebuild his business based on authentic capabilities rather than the sophisticated support systems that had been operating invisibly throughout his career. More importantly, Dorothy said, your rehabilitation will include permanent requirements for ongoing community service and regular character assessment that ensures your treatment of elderly populations and family relationships maintains the standards necessary for continued business eligibility. Any regression to patterns of elder disrespect or family exploitation will result in immediate and permanent disqualification from Richardson Industries network. The ongoing supervision requirements ensured that Marcus's character development would be a lifelong commitment rather than a temporary program he could complete and then ignore. The systematic accountability for family relationships and elderly treatment provided safeguards that protected other vulnerable people from similar exploitation while maintaining pressure for continued personal growth. There's one more thing you need to understand, Dorothy said, reaching for documents that would formalize the new relationship between Marcus and Richardson Industries. Sarah has accepted the position of Vice President for Ethics and Character Assessment within our executive team. Her legal expertise and demonstrated family values make her ideally suited for developing industry standards that prevent elder abuse and ensure that business opportunities support entrepreneurs whose character matches their capability. The revelation that Sarah would be overseeing character assessment processes, including ongoing evaluation of Marcus's rehabilitation, created additional accountability that ensured family relationships would remain central to his professional eligibility. The irony that his sister now held authority over his business prospects reflected how completely his systematic family exploitation had redirected opportunities based on character demonstration and elderly respect. Marcus, Dorothy concluded, standing to indicate the meeting's end. I want you to understand that this opportunity for limited business relationship restoration represents not forgiveness for your elder abuse planning, but recognition that people can change when they're willing to do the hard work of genuine character development. Your future success will depend entirely on your continued commitment to treating elderly wisdom with respect and family relationships with the dignity they deserve. As Marcus left Richardson Industries headquarters that Tuesday morning, carrying documents that would enable Insight Flow's basic survival while ensuring permanent accountability for his character and family relationship, he understood that his expensive lesson about elderly respect had fundamentally changed not only his business prospects but his understanding of what constituted authentic success and meaningful achievement. The technology company he had tried to build through family exploitation would never achieve the rapid growth and industry recognition that hidden support systems had previously enabled, but the character development he had earned through systematic community service and family relationship restoration had provided foundations for sustainable success based on genuine capability rather than advantages he had never recognized or appreciated. The elderly community members who had taught Marcus about patience, wisdom, and the value of intergenerational respect had given him education more valuable than any business school or professional training program. The recognition that aging brought accumulated knowledge and perspective, rather than irrelevance and burden, had transformed his approach to family relationships and community responsibility in ways that would influence every aspect of his personal and professional life. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are also the most valuable ones. The nephew who called his aunt a pathetic leech, living off family charity, learned that elderly family members aren't burdens to be exploited but sources of wisdom to be treasured, and that character determines destiny in ways that transcend individual capability and professional ambition. The reception desk at Richardson Industries, where Marcus had once expected to be welcomed as a successful entrepreneur seeking investment support, had instead become the place where he learned that genuine success requires foundations of respect, humility, and service to others, especially the elderly family members whose sacrifices and wisdom create opportunities for the next generation to build authentic prosperity based on character rather than manipulation. Remember, when you dismiss elderly wisdom as irrelevant to modern success, you might discover that the people you're underestimating actually control the very systems your dreams depend on. Respect for family isn't just moral obligation, it's practical necessity for anyone who wants to build lasting success based on authentic relationships rather than exploitation and abuse.